afternoon. Kimberly Johnson is a poet, translator, and literary critic. Her work has appeared widely in publications including The New Yorker, Slate, the Iowa Review, PMLA, and Modern Philology. Recipient of grants and fellowships from the John Simon Guggenheim Memorial Foundation, the National Endowment for the Arts, the Utah Arts Council, and the Mellon Foundation. Johnson holds an MA from the Johns Hopkins Writing Seminars, an MFA from the Iowa Writers Workshop, and a PhD in Renaissance Literature from the University of California at Berkeley. Kimberly Johnson lives in Salt Lake City, Utah. Of her most recent poetry collection, Fatal, Paisley Rechtel states, quote, "Who knew how rich F words were to naming the most powerful inflection points in our lives, whether a pandemic-induced fever or a pregnancy, whether the precipice of adolescence or the foreshadowed loss of a spouse. In poems full of taut, lavish language, Fatal examines how we live poised between terror and delight, stasis and transformation, ever bewildered by how even the simplest objects and events can change everything in an instant," unquote. Also concerning Fatal, Jericho Brown shares, quote, "Kimberly Johnson's Fatal seems to rise out of the landscape or our impending loss of it. Yes, this is a book about motherhood inasmuch as we can consider motherhood at the end of the world. Yes, this is a book about being in love inasmuch as any reacher remembers how foolish I for fretting after silver, linings as if lost were not the principle of love. This is a brilliant book of well-wrought lines crafted in the absolutely original way for which Kimberly Johnson has become known and admired. I love these poems," unquote. As a young mother, I deeply appreciate Johnson's works about motherhood, particularly her poem Pharaoh. For me, this poem finds the words to explain the inexplicable love, fear, and sorrow attached to pregnancy and life beyond it. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Kimberly Johnson to the English Reading Series.
Thank you so much, Michaela, and to Joey for coordinating the series this semester, and to all y'all for coming today. I said night because it got very dim in here, and suddenly I feel that it's time for a nap. I'm going to start off. I've been waiting and waiting for snow to accumulate. I feel like it's not that much to ask. I'm in a kind of wintry frame of mind, and the snow has not yet accommodated my desires. So I'll just start with a kind of winter-esque poem, and we'll see where it goes from there. This poem is called Cow Punch. Unhobble your hard-scrabble horses, soul. The night before us is steep and long, and the steers won't drive themselves. They moan in the gloaming and clack horns one to another's as to the comfort of fence posts. Their nerves are barbed wire. Footsore and far from pasture, we fret a course across the endless range, the sage flats, a gray disorientation of spooks and noise to all horizons. I, with my whistle, my whip-crack consistency, am their only known thing, and they will follow me anywhere. To the hilltop, the feedlot, the bolt gun's red floor. The wind is picking up, trawling its weather. Snow will hard fall like a heavy body and shove the dawn back down. And if we, frost-burnt, snow-blind, shoulder through the storm to find our destination, it will kill us. Soul, I will follow you anywhere. Probably spend the bulk of today reading from my new collection, Fatal, which has a very cool cover by Magritte. And it is, it's a book that I started writing in about 2016. As I started to feel that that I was in danger of losing a whole bunch of things that seemed important to me. My kids were starting to age into their own independence, which, not to guilt trip you college students, but it sucks when your kids don't want to like sit on your lap all the time because they're 20. It's uncool. And also, you know, as we all get older, the people we love get older as well. And in 2017, my spouse was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And was given 2 years to live. He did make it to 2022, so that's a victory. But I'm conscious of all those different kinds of losses, the ways that we as humans are conditioned to one loss after another. This book, I started thinking about moving through life as a series of things that imperil us, and that's why the book is called Fatal. And so many of the poems, actually all of the poems in this book, are instances of imperilment, as I was thinking about ways that we are threatened. So I'll read several poems from this book. It's a word about its organization. All the poems in the book begin with the letter F, or the title, rather, begins with the letter F. The deep logic of this is a deeply nerdy logic. The library, which I think Robert Means might feel like seen when I explain it this way. The call sign F in the Library of Congress cataloging system indicates local history. And so since these all seemed like really local, like there are a lot of things out there in the world that are dangerous, a lot of things that put us at risk. And on a cultural, political level, I think we've all felt an intensified sense of risk in the last several years, especially as discourse has become less and less civil. I wanted to distinguish the imperilments of this book from large-scale imperilments. These are local instances of local history, local imperilments. So I'll just read a few of these. And by a few, I mean like for the next 20, 25 minutes or until I get tired of going through this book. So this first, the book begins and ends with a sonnet. And there's a sonnet smack dab in the middle. So I'll read those three sonnets at intervals over the course of the next little while. So the first poem is called Fall. Dear one, I've come home to aftermath. Unseasonable snow has snapped the apple tree in half. Branches cracked, scattered apples, 1,000 damaged hearts across the yard, a windfall already spoiling. I've read the news, daily outrages against the human, ruin in triage, against which shocks what is the fall of a tree. My life so small and common, I am ashamed to feel it as a risk. And yet, all my care, sudden uprooted and open to weather, dumbfound I at my unhomely door remain, key ring in my fist, a plug of cordite, lock a latent spark, whole world ready to ignite. This next poem is called Familial, and I'm going to quiz you at the end. I'm going to, well, not quiz is the wrong word. I'm going to poll you at the end. And you're going to tell me whether you think it's a positive poem or a negative poem, okay? It's familial. It's also a true story. Automatic, planless. My father, startled from his roadside piss, kicks gun to shoulder, cranks shell to chamber, knocks the buck down. His jeans bag at his ankles. My orange plastic vest crackles in the wind. I am 10. We are 10 miles out from camp, dirt bike half slung off the mud-rutted road, while at our feet the unintended 4-point sinks into the redly melting snow. Masterly, our butchery. Quick jugulation, bloodless slice down the center line as I hold the hind legs wide, the tugs that empty throat and heart, guts and sex onto the ground for coyotes. Like lords, I think, our progress back to camp. The carcass upright on the motorcycle seat, hooves roped to pedal and handlebar, head half severed, lolling antlers back onto my father's shoulder, while I, snugged into its vertical gash, throttle down the mountain. I am red-handed, wind raw, and triumphal. I am my father's son. Okay, happy poem, sad poem. Okay. that's very interesting. So I read that poem a couple years ago in New York, and this woman came up to me, this very well-meaning woman came up to me afterwards. She said, I wanted to tell you how sorry I am about your childhood. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And she's like, the abuse you suffered at the hands of your father. I'm like, abuse? What are you talking? She's like, the poem with the deer and you like sat inside the carcass. I'm like, that was the greatest day of my life. What are you talking about? So I think that it is regional. My theory is that there are regional differences in reactions to that image. I'll read the poem that Michaela mentioned because she was kind enough to mention it. It's called Pharaoh, and Pharaoh is a word to describe pregnant animals. So, Pharaoh. Full in the fat wallow of me, superfluity, even to the marrow. Blood plumping along in a red swell of venules, blushing my most unabashed skin patches. Nose tip, earlobe, wrist shallow. Oh, this mother is a crush of too muchness, a malady of my baffled self awash. Accomplished finally the days, will I find my bones I lost? Will my sharps and edges hedge this fleshy habit I've made of excess? Already my heart racing startles in another's twitches, my dinner hiccups another's diaphragm. Already and almost, I swear I feel the protein creep of me, cell by splitting cell, into another's life. My mother grief sorrows not for the heart-close one I'll lose from me at my delivery, but for my own soul overboiling, unbound, bound to a stranger's groans, undone by his hurts and remorses to the third and fourth generations. What I'm birthing is my own diffusion, never again mere, never again my own. Okay, so do you all know what a farthingale is? It's like the big wickery thing that's the big construction that's underneath the skirts of Southern belles. So if you've seen Gone with the Wind, you've seen Scarlett O'Hara's farthingale, which is underneath. And for years I thought that the word farthingale must surely have come from like some combination of money and wind. And I was so disappointed to find out that it means nothing like that. It's just like the English version of the French word for farthingale. So that's very disappointing, but I've reclaimed the my nonce etymology here. This is called farthingale. Lo, my pennyworth of wind blown, hurricane of lash and whalebone, how often I fastened its billows about me, sashed beneath furbelows. Tight cinches the corset, tighter the stays, smooth and tight for the bodice's lacings. But my underpinnings upgust from ankle to thigh to the untrussed cyclonic eye of me. I'm the low-pressure system sinking the barometer, the microburst havocing the weathercock, while I batten down to placid seem as a white-glove Sunday in June. Like all tempests, I say, hallelujah for the cage, the isobars, the wickerwork and cartilage within whose strictures wildness can wind itself up to the shape of its binding. It's the lid sets the tea kettle rocking at the boil. The shell's song, the gunpowder sings. All right, this is called Female. Locker room truant in a locked stall, through study hall hiding, hands stifling her cries, a girl wide eyes the unimagined smear of blood rusting her fingertips. Secret, quaint horror. Some betrayal of the flesh has left her vulnerable, her blithe pell-mell redefining to this singularity. But no. She is smarter than her body. She will starve this woman out. She will run and outrun the turncoat moon. She will fire sail down to a shoestring inventory. Item, 2 eyes, indifferent blue. Item, brain and brainstem. Item, 1 mouth, tightened like a screw cap on the business end of the pipe bomb she's just become. I've never read this poem out loud, but I'm going to try to do it today. I don't know if you all know this, but a couple years ago there was a global pandemic, and it forced us all to stay away from our families and the people we love and to lock ourselves in houses. And because I had vulnerable people in the house, we were more locked down than other people. So this is a poem called Fever, and it's in some sections, 9 sections. Wow, that's a long poem. But they're not, some of the sections are very short, so if you don't like it, it will be over very soon. If it gives you like flashbacks, pandemic flashbacks. So Fever. Oh, I should also tell you, perhaps, that one of the things that occurred at the beginning of the pandemic is that my spouse, who taught in Florida, and I were in different states and didn't know how long it would be that we were unable to travel. So that's part of the concern of this poem. Fever. 1. The sky is shut. No bright lines against the fading day. No wingtip lights attend us companionably at midnight. 2. My mother's 80th birthday. Masked, I sang my cheer across the grass. I asked if she needed groceries, chalked a poem onto her street, hugged the air, and then went home. 3. Samuel Pepys, 1665. But Lord, how empty the streets are, and melancholy, so many poor sick people, and so many sad stories overheard as I walk, everybody talking of this dead, and that man sick, and so many in this place, and so many in that, and they tell me that in Westminster there is never a physician, and but one apothecary left, all being dead, but that there are great hopes of a great decrease this week, God send it. 4. The air is shut. Those suspect molecules skulk from lethal you to lethal me, our bronchioles defenseless in this novel wind. We shrink from touching, flinch away from welcome and the rank vapor of good wishes. We are all made ghosts together. 5. Lucy Hutchinson, 1664. And now I am mine own pale, empty shade. 6. 40 days of doldrums like 40 days of rain. We each an ark whose freight is moored uncertain off the coast of Venice. Quarantino, as they counted, a proof against contagion biblically drawn out. Our own becalmed days lengthen past their season. Each held fast, we in our own rooms. We keep the windows sealed. We wouldn't know if some bird with a twig happened to show. 7. Our dramas have become soliloquies. 8. Far away, my love, each passing day is felt as distance, space as long as time it takes to travel from ocean yours to desert mine by imperiled car. You cannot fly. The sky is shut. 9. My ruinous anatomy, Donne called the keepsake scrawl he left as consolation when absence him his love bereft. Here's my own packet of bedraggled words, a paper airplane folded and released across the vast pandemic miles to land, perhaps the worse for wear, into your hands. So I read an article a few years ago about how the violin came to be over a course of time. The earliest violins did not have the shape of cutout on the faceplate that we have come to know They had small circles. The first violins had circle holes, right? And then they had C-shaped holes. And then finally, this studio of music-making luthier artists in Cremona, Italy, invented the F-hole. So this poem is called F-hole. Run your thumb under the trembling string along the fretted neck and back the curve and burnish of the sounding board, then rim a fingertip over and into the cut-out lip, luthier, to the spruce's smooth expose. What the knife knows is its own sweet progress through the wood grain. What the wood grain knows will at last hum through what passage the blade opens, released like a long sigh into the world's unwitting ear. The whimsied engineer who first this flourish scribed aspired less to the nice math of resonant frequencies and pressure differentials than to the curl shaving pale and warm into his palm, the one whose whorls he longed to touch. What other love can explain the plaintive timbre of this Cremonese fancy, unanswerable strain through the finial's swell to the hearing's inmost chamber? His error of exchange to us as a heritage remains. Belated even to our own fleet loves, we invent for everyone an accident to be tooled as a seal into anything we can hold. Thus, luthier, do you bring your knives to bed. Thus do you wear my ring. All right, do you all know the painting The Fall of the Rebel Angels by Peter Bruegel the Elder? If the answer is no, then it is your job right now to take whatever device you're holding in your lap and Google The Fall of the Rebel Angels by Bruegel so that you can see this painting. It's a big painting. It's not the biggest painting, but it's a pretty big painting. Next to it is the famous, hanging next to it in the art gallery in the Old Masters Gallery in Brussels, is a smaller painting which people who like literature and like poetry know pretty well. It's The Fall of Icarus, and W.H. Auden wrote a poem about that, about suffering they are never wrong, the old masters, it begins, right? But next to that painting is this larger canvas, The Fall of the Rebel Angels. I really like this painting a lot, and even more than this painting, I like the fact that a few years ago, when my kids were teenagers, we were able to go and see this painting and see some other paintings, but really this painting. And it's in this beautiful hall that has a skylight. And I stood back from the canvas and watched these two boys of mine look at the painting. And the painting, if you're looking at it now, you will see there's a lot going on in this painting, right? So they made it into kind of a game, like a Where's Waldo kind of game. And they were just like seeing who could find and identify and use cool names for the most things in that painting. So that's the game they were playing while we were looking at it. And so that's the experience that gave rise to this poem, which is called 15. And every couple minutes, or not couple minutes, every so often in this poem, I will just kind of blurt out a word. And that is meant to give you a sense of my kids like pointing out the things that they're identifying on the canvas. So this is called 15. Terrapin, tentacle. In the atrium brightness, my son's delight presses so close to the canvas the guard coughs a caution. The commotion of wing and fang that is Bruegel's Fall of the Rebel Angels hangs like a trespass. Claw, carapace, like a curious cabinet had sex with a scavenger hunt. Salamander, halfway headlong down his hurtle, one handles in his demonic fist a fish basket, finned with switches. Another faller fledges into swallowtail, the fleshy edges of his lewdness startled with butterfly finery. A third, hurdy-gurdy, is girt with the garnet and sudden gold wings of the Lucifer bird. Every peculiar pursued to its foundering is part something else, armadillo, esquire, as agog at itself as at an ambush of angels. My angels, half plunged into each your own strangeness, gangly and almost in need of a shave, amphibian, astrolabe, as the transiting sun through the window pane frames you momently still in your mutual conclave of puzzle and name, I observing can guess why the heavens mustered, taking to trumpet and frantic buckler. Some with swords would arrest that reverseless pufferfish fall, holding fast their once familiars by force. But see, in the ether, a flourish of brasses, a mass of seraphs suspended, weaponless. I suppose those horns clarion not in discord, but in blessing. A benediction on the dim, bewildered way ahead, which as yet they do not know, and so cannot regret. All right. I feel a strong degree of confidence that this is the only poem that exists that's about rock climbing. So, it's called 512. If you are not a rock climber, 512 indicates a grade of difficulty that is more difficult. So, 512. Hexes, hooks, nuts, full rack of cams, quick draws, quick links, with what sustaining clanks they fill the pack, how they heft in the hand with metallic assurance. We palm fondle, we fetish with thumbs, we toothbrush off the grains of sand. We love the gear as we love God, as we love any salvation fable, believing our love hangs from the rope of our peril. Thus do we sling to an anchor, thus smear foot rubber to rock, as if every heel hook and hand jam were of faith our testament. But as any penitent knows, it's never grace that calls us to ascend, but gravity's sweet and awful hazard. If we weren't in it for the fall, we'd walk. Okay, so this poem, it comes out of my experience of caretaking my spouse during the days of his illness. It's called Foley catheter. Foley catheter is the instrument that gets inserted in order to allow urine to drain out of you when you're not able to do that for yourself. So, Foley catheter. I clean its latex length 3 times a day with kindliest touch. Swipe an alcohol swatch from the tender skin at the tip of him down the lumen to the drainage bag I change each day and flush with vinegar. When I vowed for worse, unwitting did I wed this something other than a husband, jumble of exposed plumbing and euphemism. Fumble I through my nurse's functions, upended but from the spare bed by his every midnight sound. Unsought inside our grand romantic intimacy, another intimacy opens, ruthless and indecent, consuming all our hiddenmosts. In a body, immodest such hunger we sometimes call tumor. In a marriage, it's cherish, from the Latin for cost. Let's see. So, you know what the fontanelle is? The fontanelle is the soft spot at the top of the baby's head that is not quite closed by the time it's born. Still kind of a hole there. Not to make you think that this whole book is just filled with sorrow. This is, I think, the most joyful piece I've ever written. It's called Fontanelle. When you came into the world unfinished, I mistook you for hope. You, the wide open window in every room. You, the flute's embouchure, to whose new tune the world ever puts its breathy mouth. You, in spring earth, the thumbprint, into whose keeping I commit something scant, something frail to a late frost, yet greening in tendrils through all that winter lost. All right, you want to see another painting? I think you want to see another painting. Okay, get your phones out. The painting that you're looking for right now is called The Adoration of the Mystic Lamb by Hubert and Jan van Eyck. E-Y-C-K is the last name. Okay, so you just saw this. I bet you just saw this. Did you go to Ghent?
2 weeks ago.
Okay,
Yes.
they were in Ghent 2 weeks ago. It's in a cathedral in Ghent. And it's like this big altarpiece. It's enormous, and it has, when it's closed, the outside of the altarpiece is painted in grayscale, and the inside is painted with color. And during Lent, they close it because you're not supposed to have all that kind of celebratory color going on during Lent, and then they throw it open on Easter. I just think it's this amazing, like, complex, multi-paneled piece of art. So this is called Formulary. And a formulary is what? A text that guides religious devotion. Hush, lamb, lavish with blood in madder red, your varnish overfed, too fat for this thin season. Hush, choir, be rubied, embroidered, unsombre as the lute tuned to your organ's lustrous umber. And all you pious press in festal vestments, silken chevaliers and saints, fold up your banners, fold in your Flemish wings. We must a wan and wastrel vista now, at the phlegmatic end of spring, swapping our wanton carmines for shamefast grisailles and the stern click of the altarpiece latch. Here's the catch. Though we've stanched our chansons, slouching to matins, roughed in our workaday drab, yet our grayscales blush under the muffled thrum through the shut hinges like the heat from a wood stove. We are by beauty shrove, and we its pledges confess it, in each intemperate pulse at the wrist, in the rash prismatics of our glances. We've committed its rubrics to heart, and to all the black letter austeres, this our inmost responsory, vermilion, crimson, cadmium, madder red. Okay, here's another poem that involves doing things, doing risky things. Despite the fact that the world is filled with peril, some of us can't stop seeking more peril. This is called Free Fall. Dearly beloved, how headlong the pledge of the jump. The open, implacable hatch, propellers hot wash thumping like a heart in the ear, toe tips pivoting over the last row of rivets to pitch into air, fathoms of air, the king air plummeting upward from my body's absurd downward majesty, my oath to gravity attested in this my breakable flesh. As breathless it blurs toward the resolute ground, the sky sudden jerks, opens, silken into crimson, a poppy in the buttonhole of day. Another pops some yards away, and then another, bright receiving line, curtsying its gracious welcome down the middle atmosphere. What betrayal to find, after my flamboyant fall, I favor this buoyant parachute drift, the wedding party to the wedding. Groom of earth, if you want to embrace me, you must marry me more quickly. More quickly. Okay, one last piece of art that you get to get your phones out for. Okay, there's this monastery complex in the mountains between the Republic of Georgia and Azerbaijan. And in the top of these mountains, there's this cave system called the David Gareji, D-A-V-I-D or T, up to you. Gareji is G-A-R-E-J-I. So the David Gareji Monastery complex is tunneled into caves in the top of this mountain. And you climb up there and you go into these caves, and they are filled with frescoes, old frescoes, like 9th century frescoes. And they depict Christ and the apostles in all kinds of interesting scenarios, because the Christianity of Georgia is apostolic Christianity. That is to say, it doesn't have a direct relationship with the other lines of Christianity. It's its own line of Christianity. So you get a version of Jesus that you don't see anywhere else. And I think those caves are really cool. So you can see some pictures of the paintings if you search those terms, David Gareji caves, on the Wikipedia. This is called frescoes. The convent keeps its sacrament of rock, a pick and chisel consecration, every cell one station of a holy isolation. To this fastness have I brought my Byzantine fixation on all things monastic, born of a notion that silent and withdrawn I might at last enclose my fugitive virtue in a bare, bored heart. But every chamber a debauch of color, Christ of ochre, slouching one saucy thigh askance, velvet-cloaked Christ with red lips a simper and the sad, orthodox eyes of a lover. I have betrayed my dun ascetic from my earliest. Beneath the burlap of my swaddling I have pulsed into my very plaster, cinnabar blushed down to the rough of my bones, and no chantry far or flint enough to unfix it. God knows we bear our truest cloister with us as we go. I will read just 2 more. Some of you might remember this. I will just contextualize this poem by locating it in Nutty Putty Cave, which is a cave system out in the West Desert. And a fumarole is a steam vent for hot underground pockets. Fumarole. Beyond the spelunker's last chaucy handfast, past the furthest unwind of a rescuer's line, a boy as limber and scabbed as I got him wedged tight in a pinch of granite. I have finger and toed that hole, forward, inch by inch, cheek by rock, have jackknifed my hip sockets over the jut that caught him up, have fumbled finger blind for an edge, an elbow for leverage, a pull, and then through. What I found down in that hot dark, I've forgotten. The ground is an oubliette wherein, unechoed, dull, the tongue unsings its hungers, and the human push to prove itself runs out against the terminal wall, breathless and bent small. Whatever the boy found belongs now to cement and trowel. They sealed the cave's mouth when he died. Last poem, it's a sonnet. Thanks again for paying attention today. F word. How foolish I, for fretting after silver linings, as if loss were not the principle of love. From its first resistless quiver, the heart keeps giving its stupid all, that fleshy bankrupt, to what beloved ever it sets itself upon. You are dear, dear one, because of the expense, in fear, in wakefulness, in all the unrecoverable tenders that account my faith. I am in forfeiture, and nothing worth but what unthrift I freely risk in you. You, my Hesperides, unguarded gold orchard at the danger edge of the world. Thank you. So I guess I'm answering questions. If there are any. Yes.
Okay, so you touched on this a little bit, but in relation to this book, Fatal, did you first notice many instances of a fatality with death, of loss, and then combine them together? Or did you first have this theme and then look for images that describe it?
Oh, that's a good question. Like, which came first, the idea for the book or the things that produced the idea?
Yeah.
Is it really hot in here? I think it's real. Hold on just a second. I just wrote a bunch of poems. It usually takes me about a third of a book to realize what the governing logic of a book is. And so I was just writing a bunch of poems, and I was like, I'm writing about a lot of things that seem like they are human risks. And so after I became aware of it, you try not to look too closely at it, because you don't want to become heavy-handed. You don't want it to wreck the things that you're paying attention to without forcing yourself to pay attention to them. So, but starting at about a third of the way through the book, I was like, oh, what do you know? Now I know what this book is about. So it's a good question. Other questions? Yes, Paul?
Thanks, Kim. When I listen to a poet read, I'm always paying attention to the music. And your sound is really unique. And yet I hear other poets in it. And
Little Hopkins.
I was I wondered if you could talk about that without reducing your poems, that conversation that you're having with Hopkins.
Sure. I mean, I would say not just Hopkins. It's inevitable. If you've decided to write poems, then what you are doing is entering into a conversation that has 3,000 years of history behind it, right? There are already people in the room, and a new poem is just trying to it's a very crowded cocktail party, and a new poem just kind of nudges its way in at the side and tries to identify people in the room that it feels comfortable with, right? Because when you go to a big crowded cocktail party, you're like, I don't want to talk to that dude. Oh my gosh. Oh, but I like her a lot. So you kind of edge up to her and kind of listen to what she's saying until it seems like there's a moment where you might productively but unselfconsciously enter into the conversation. So I would say that, like, if you think of literary history as this big cocktail party, it's unavoidable that you're going to speak in similar registers to poets whose aesthetic you resonate with. Now, having said that, there are poets, the poets that I tend to like are poets who are difficult, and whose difficulty inheres precisely in the kind of the flaunting of the aesthetic surface of the poem. So poems that resist you because they're full of sound, or because their form is performatively ostentatious. Like, you have to pay attention to the formal features of the poem in order to engage with its content. The form is part of the content. That's true of all poems. I just tend to like poems and to want to stand next to cocktail party guests who have a lot of who obstruct my relationship with content because of the richness of sound and the richness of music. Also, I'm a functional piano player. I don't read music so much anymore. It's been years since I've tried. I'm functional. I'm a functional guitar player, maybe a little better guitar player than piano because there are fewer things to put my fingers on. But I am a failed musician, and these are why am I drawn to poems that have this kind of particular way of expressing aesthetics, that is to say, stuffing themselves with sound? It's because I just want to be a rock star, and I can't. And so I'm stuck with words, and so I have to have them be my instrument. And I'm interested in poets who do that also. Yeah, Phil.
Kim, you are a rock star. But it's always occurred to me that your translation work, your Renaissance scholarship, it's all your poetry, it's all of a piece. I
Yeah.
hear echoes of everything everywhere. Would you talk a little bit about that, your precision of language, just the way it's all of a piece. It's not three different things that you do. Could you just talk about
Yeah, okay, so just to restate, I don't think I restated Paul. Sorry, Paul. Phil asks, can I talk about the relationship between, my other gig is doing scholarship of Renaissance literature. I also do a lot of translating from very old stuff, and so Phil wants to know what's the relationship between those things. The relationship between those things is that they're not three distinct activities, they're the same activity expressed in three different modes. And so in each of these instances, I'm really just interested in how, not just in how language communicates or how language works, but rather in how poetic language manages to communicate in two registers simultaneously, right? Because if you are engaging with a poem, you are committing to a text that is telling you one thing with its words, the things that you can look up in a dictionary. Like, those words have definitions, right? Iambic pentameter doesn't have a definition other than to describe what iambic pentameter is. If you look up iambic pentameter, you're not going to get like a stable, consistent meaning across poems. So I'm really interested in the way that poems are instruments of simultaneity, that they perform these two different tasks, two different communicative tasks simultaneously, and that our brains are trying to toggle back and forth between them. So it's a kind of materialistic or phenomenological interest, and that is true across all the stuff. I mean, that governs the research that I do as a scholar of Renaissance literature, and it governs the texts that I choose to translate. I tend to translate chunky texts that do these things that I've been talking about. And then I just try to do it myself, DIY. Yes.
So this goes back to the very first question that you talked about knowing kind of what you're looking for a third of the way through the book.
Yeah.
And I'm curious what you do to maintain kind of that feeling of chasing something or the tension of still not knowing what you're doing when you kind of know what you're doing.
Yeah.
You still have 2/3
So if I still have 2/3 of a book, yeah, how do I avoid heavy-handedly pursuing it? Lots of distraction. And like just to tie together these threads, one distraction is the sounds of words. Like, if you concentrate on making poems out of sound, then it's hard to let yourself like free willy all over content, you know? You just can't spend all your time thinking about content or strong-arming content into being if you're constraining yourself with a set of rules. And so one trick that poetry offers is the ability to, this is when I say that I don't want to look directly at the subject, but you can come at it obliquely by finding formal cognates formal analogs for what's a formal analog for loss? Slant rhyme might be conceived as a formal analog for loss, or the establishment and then destruction of a meter might be a formal analog for loss, so that you can look at things like that to trick your brain into a different kind of work, so that you don't become, somebody who's just like hammering home a point. It's a good question. It's a hard question to think about. It's your hand up. Yes.
This is a bit of an abstract question. Are there certain sounds that to you just sound positive and others that just sound negative? Like you find when you're writing about one thing, you always tend towards certain sounds?
I mean, she wants to know, do consonants have feelings, essentially? And vowels. Yes. To answer your question, I'm going to direct you to somebody else's work. There's this book that I teach a lot. Some of you may have been in classes with me. This book by a poet named Christian Book, B-O-K, called Eunoia. And this book has its 5 chapters of poetry, and the first chapter uses only words that only have the vowel A in them. The second chapter uses only words that only have the vowel E in them, and so forth through the vowels. And I love this because of the difference, the kind of difference in tone, the difference in mood that these different chapters produce is remarkable. Like, you wouldn't think it. But the third chapter is very sophisticated and elegant, and the U chapter is like caveman talk, and it's all down, like the U sounds are all down in your body. So I feel like I wouldn't say necessarily that there are happy sounds and sad sounds, but I would say that there are sounds that are more and less embodied, or that generate in the reader more and less awareness of their own embodiment. And so, yeah, you use that. Use that to your advantage. Also, I love all consonants, all of them, and the more the better. And actually, this goes back to Paul's thought a little bit. I mean, one of the reasons that Hopkins is such a loud voice in my cocktail party is that he's all about consonants, right? Like, he just wants to put consonants and stressed syllables. In a line of iambic pentameter of Hopkins, 9 of those 10 syllables are going to be stressed. And I aspire to yell like that. I like to make yourself heard. Any other questions? Yes, Krista.
Have you worked through your childhood traumatic relationship with your father?
I worked through it by buying the same motorcycle for myself. Any other questions? Okay, that's it. Go have a cookie. Thanks.